Today I want to discuss housing. But before we start talking about housing, I also want to remind you that I don't know about you, but as I said this morning, fatigue hits me at around about this time, so please join me, wave the hands in the air so I know that no one is sleeping. Let me see the hands. Everybody wave. Thank you. Thank you. And if I start to drowse a bit up here, wave at me again. Now, I want to talk about housing seriously. This applies whether you live in an owned house or a flat that you rent. Your lifestyle can be significantly altered by any access problems, either within or without your house. This cartoon shows the difficulties that Anka was speaking of and many of us live with. It's probably not easy to read the actual text there, but it says, yes, to find the access road, you go down these steps and through the park and through the gate, and then you'll find another set of steps, and then that will be the access road. And that is sometimes the case in some of our towns and cities, I have to say, having been around a few of them in Europe in recent years. They're not always accessible. It's no joke when we had in Australia, not so long ago, an Office of Disability, which was set up on the second floor of a building with no lift. So it was an excellent way of ensuring that nobody in a wheelchair actually visited the Office of Disability. And this situation went on for quite some months before the penny dropped and someone said, this is not suitable for an Office of Disability, and they had to change it. I'm lucky that I can sometimes negotiate stairs, but people using wheelchairs have no options, and stairs really discriminate against them. Except, of course, for that remarkable wheelchair I saw here this morning. I'm not sure I'd care to trust myself on a long flight of stairs with it, but it's an excellent option, and there are others being built. I know, I've seen a few of them. Some of them have the very large tractor-type wheels, which really can negotiate steps. But on the other hand, not everyone can afford those, and I think that in general the person in the wheelchair does feel discriminated against when they face a set of steps to go somewhere. I've noticed that in train stations. Quite interesting travelling around looking at access. We recently come from Venice, and I think I've walked up more stairs and down more stairs in Venice than I have in years, because it's the only way you can get around, isn't it? If you're not in a gondola, you simply have to walk up the stairs. And on only one set of stairs in the whole city did we see a little wheelchair lift set off at the side. It was being used the day we were there by someone who was putting deliveries on it. So I thought, yes, okay, we get the message. The delivery boys don't like pushing their stuff up the stairs either. How you access your home can actually have a significant effect on your life and health. This little cartoon here is what I term the Daleks. I don't know if anyone here ever saw the series Doctor Who. It was very popular at home and very popular, I think, in England as well. And the Daleks have captured these two people who are saying there, yes, we've been kidnapped, but they promise us we'll never see another set of stairs again. And they're being raced off into the spaceship to go goodness knows where. That sort of thing really can have a very, very severe effect on you. And if you're nervous about going out, because you're going to be so fatigued when coming home that it may be difficult to get into the house, then you need to take some strong steps to change that. And of course, it's not just the stairs or the ramps outside. It's the freedom of movement inside the house which is particularly important and creates lots of problems. If your place has lots of heavy furniture, and heaven knows some of us have some very old-fashioned heavy furniture, you may need to have a clearing sale to get rid of some of it because you must be able to move around freely. It doesn't matter if they're family heirlooms, it's for your own safety, these things have to go. There's a lot of discussion happening in Australia at the present time about residential living and the design for this. Unfortunately, for many people with MS and other disabilities, living at home can become an absolute impossibility, and there may be no choice but to move into residential care, or as I think they term them in the United States, a facility, as these homes are sometimes called. And I have to say that last week I did see a facility. When we asked what it was, we were told it was a home for old people, and I have to say it didn't look very friendly. It was all small windows and grey walls, and God knows how many stories high. It looked like a prison rather than a facility. Not very good. When I'm saying here that bathroom design must suit your disability, this is extremely important. If changes are too expensive, fit handrails beside the toilet and shower, for goodness sake, because falls can be extremely expensive. So no doubt people have had falls in their bathrooms or toilets or whatever, and we dine out on classic stories of having to call the ambulance or the fire service or something to get someone off the floor where they've become trapped after they've fallen between the tub and the toilet or something like that. And not only is it very embarrassing, it's also very expensive, because if you break a leg or an ankle or something like that, then you're going to be in hospital, and that's a shocking expense. Now, we're talking here about universal housing design. This is not a new concept, but it's an idea which is now spreading worldwide, and it's quite active in Australia and I think in Canada and the States as well. The idea is the lower level of a high-set house must be accessible with either no entry stairs or with a ramp. And it may be necessary to fit an accessible ensuite into the lower level. The idea being that it's not necessarily going to be a case of having to refit a whole house, but to make one level accessible. We do have this concept in Australia where very often the lower level has to be raised, unfortunately, and that can be quite expensive, and there's very little government aid to do that. I think our MS Society has often offered a grant to someone to raise their house sufficiently to put in a water lift so that they could access the house. But it's not what you'd call an ideal solution, and if we'd had universal housing design to start with, some of these problems might have been eliminated. I want to show you an alternative about these things. If you think about redesigning the house and you think this is far too expensive, you simply can't do it. Think about the cost of living in a nursing home. It costs in Australia for 10 years 800,000 Australian dollars. Of course, at present rates, like someone said this morning, is probably worth about 12 euros or something now. But it's quite expensive. That's for 10 years. This will be plus the cost of any time spent in hospital for skin repair breakdown, and that can be quite expensive. I don't know about over here, but in Australia, if you were hospitalised for acute skin repair requiring plastic surgery, you'd be looking at roughly $1,000 Australian a day. So it's something which is extremely important if you're thinking about you can't afford to redesign the house, you'll just put up with it for a little bit longer. Please do not do so.